you've noticed that this third talk in the revival series is titled Hungering for Jesus. I could have just as easily titled it Seeking God's Face. And throughout this talk, we're going to be touching on both of those two angles, the hungering angle and the seeking God's face angle. And they're basically addressing the same question, and that's this: how much do we want Jesus? Simple question. You can ask yourself today, whoever you are, however you've come, how much do I want Jesus? And like the last few weeks, this thought is intrinsically linked to revival, because all of revival history tells us that whenever it's broken out, it's because the church has just been down on their knees, desperate, hungering after their Savior to come, just to come, restore, heal, break free. It's always started in that place. So we're going to start with hungering, a word on hunger. You are what you eat. Oh, it's a tough one, isn't it? It gets in there for me. It scares me because I got a sweet tooth. Now, some of you know I got a very sweet tooth. I got a sweet, meaty tooth. Now, apologies to any vegetarians in the house. I know that there are some of you in here, but me and Abel up in heaven, we're going to be best pals. So I got a sweet, meaty tooth. I'm a Times reader. I don't know if any of you saw this article on the screen earlier on this week. It was titled, RFK on Trump's health. I don't know how he's still alive. And there's a picture up on the screen of Trump on Air Force One with a load of other familiar faces tucking into a load of McDonald's. And apparently when he's traveling, he goes with the big corporations. He trusts them for his food because he doesn't want to get sick traveling. Well, I can trump Trump because I don't just appreciate McDonald's when I'm traveling. I appreciate McDonald's the whole time. Pray for me. This has become a confessional. And some of you are like, preach it, brother. Others are like, no, pull out. True story. Ellie, my wife, she used to give me like breath tests when I came home. Not for cigarettes or drink, but for burger breath. It's like 100% true, and I'm ashamed of that. You are what you eat. We've got a series, a sermon series coming up on the 7 deadly sins, and the staff team know this. I'm desperately trying to dish out the sermons on gluttony and greed, because I'm going to feel like such a hypocrite speaking on those things. But on a serious note, when I'm preaching, everything filters through here first before it comes out of here. So maybe it's a good thing for me to preach on those things. Whilst I'm sharing some of the happenings of life in the Cushing house, Ellie tells me that she knows when I'm at home because she hears one of 3 things. She either hears munching, she either hears like wrappers kind of crinkling and being opened, or she hears the bread bin just opening and closing. That's because we keep the snacks in the bread bin. And sadly, my boys take after their father as well, so it's just a lot of all the time. I'm a grazer, a snacker. Let me tell you the truth again. We are what we eat. Now, if we don't get enough nutrients into our bodies, then starvation's a risk. But if we get too much of the wrong substances, then all sorts of problems can result. You get stomach pain, bloating, gout, heartburn. It can make us feel tired and sluggish. And so, friends, our appetites are hugely important. Our appetites can literally dictate the direction of our lives. What does Jesus say about this topic? How does he speak into this? Well, he says something fairly mind-blowing. He meets a crowd in John chapter 6. And this crowd, they'd heard all about Jesus' miraculous feeding of the 5,000. Maybe some of them had witnessed that and actually fed from the bread as well. And so maybe they'd met him this time. They were hoping for a bit of a free meal and also a sign on the side. And so they say to him, give us manna from heaven, just as Moses did. Here's Jesus' answer. Should be up on the screen. Listen carefully. John chapter 6, verse 35. I am the bread of life. Whoever comes to me will never go hungry, and whoever believes in me will never be thirsty. But as I told you, you have seen me, and still you do not believe. And then before his very eyes, he sees them grumbling, and so he pushes it even further. Verse 53, Jesus said to them, "Very truly I tell you," here's the thing, listen to the language, "unless you eat the flesh of the Son of Man," that's a reference to himself, "and drink his blood, you have no life in you." And then one last time, he pushes it further still, verse 55, he says, "For my flesh is real food, and my blood is real drink." Now, friends, we are on sacred ground with these verses. My intention right now, I simply don't have time to do a really deep dive to pull out all of their richness. In one sense, I wish that we were sharing Holy Communion together, because then I think with these verses in mind, we might appreciate the tangible sense of Jesus' words here at the Last Supper. Remember the Last Supper? He broke bread, and then he gives that broken bread to his disciples in the room with him. And what does he say? He says, "My body broken for you." The disciples in the room there, physically, they can see Jesus, his earthly body, his actual body. He's seated before them. He's feeding them with bread, washing their feet. They could maybe see the perspiration on his forehead. They could maybe smell his sweat because he had been hard at work. They could hug him. None of them were going over to the bread, hugging the bread, saying, "I'm never going to let go of you, Jesus." It'd be stupid, because he's in the room with them. What I'm trying to tease out by referring to both of these passages, John 6 and the Last Supper, is the beauty of what it is to feast on Jesus' body. Of course, friends, he's not advocating cannibalism. That has not been a mark of the church. Thank God, the last 2,000 years. By the Last Supper, that flesh language of John 6 has changed to bread language. And so, yes, I've mentioned Holy Communion. Next time you eat the bread at Holy Communion, remember, there's a mystery there. Yes, the bread is tangible, it's real, and yet it also spiritually connects me to Jesus. I'm feeding on him. And yet there's more for us here too. There's more for us presently right now when we're not eating communion. I think the lesson here is that Jesus is feeding his disciples in the Last Supper, in that upper room. Why? Because they're in the room with him. They're in the room with him. The grumblers in John 6, he says to them, "Unless you eat." He could have just as simply said, "Unless you follow." And sadly, we're told that they go away grumbling, empty bellies, empty souls, because they're not in the room with him. They haven't stuck around with him. The disciples, on the other hand, they followed. They're in the room with Jesus, and he fed them. And he fed them with real food that filled their bodies with what? With his body. They carried on finding their fill in him, feeding on him. Even when he ascended, because he didn't leave them as orphans, he sent his Spirit to fill them, so that even when they couldn't see him physically, they could still spiritually be in the room with Jesus. Obviously, that has ramifications for us. It means that even though we can't see him physically, we can be spiritually in the room with Jesus, feeding on his real body. And I ask you today, are you in the room with Jesus? Do you want to be in the room with Jesus? Because his door is open. He's saying, "Come to me, all who are weary and heavy laden." Are we in the room with him? One of the key great figures of the Great Awakening back in the 18th century in the States, Jonathan Edwards, not the triple jumper, the revivalist, he said these words. He said, "It's one thing to know God in the mind, it's another thing to actually feel his love on your heart." And I can try and give you an intellectually stimulating answer as to why you should believe in Jesus, or I could just say, come and see. Come and taste that the Lord is good. Why don't you go away and read the Holy Word this week and earnestly say, if there's a way of me feeding from these words, which is going to fill me up somehow, then Lord, I'll give it a go. Why don't you see if it changes things? Because reality stretches much further than the intellect can conceive. God cares about all of your senses, all of your senses. And that is beautiful if we've lost any of our senses. God doesn't just speak to us through one mode. He's a speaking God, and he knows how to speak to our very core. And I pray, friend, that he's speaking to you right now. You know, I can say, he's in the room with us. I truly believe he's in the room. God's in the room. He's in the room. But depending on where you're at, you could go away like the folk in John 6 grumbling and say that's false speak. And so I also want to say, you know, trying to give something of an intellectual stimulating answer is a good thing to do, but let's just remember it's not the only thing. God's far bigger than that. And I think that's what this hungry language is getting at. The grumblers in John 6, they came to Jesus for presents, presents, for something from him. The disciples in the upper room, they are simply happy being in his presence. Presence. You know, I love it. I love it when my two boys, I've got two boys, 10 and 3, when they burst into my room, they jump on me. Not because they want something from me. That also happens. But I love it when that's not there. All they want is a cuddle. They just want closeness. And man, like every time I'm always like streaming, like weeping. Because I know it's only a few years when that won't happen anymore. Enjoying one's presence. And so you are what you eat. In this spiritual, are we feeding off of Jesus? Do we want to be in the room with him? Here's the challenge though. And this is a challenge to me, boy oh boy. We love snacking. I love snacking. Years ago, I remember reading this book, A Hunger for God, by a pastor in the States called John Piper. There's a quote on the screen. He says this in the book: "If we don't feel strong desires for the manifestation of the glory of God, it is not because we have drunk deeply and are satisfied. Oh no. It is because we have nibbled so long at the table of the world, our soul is stuffed with small things and there is no room for the great." Wow. That's a challenge. I know it's true of me. Is it of you? I just wonder what the snacks are in our lives that are spoiling our appetite for the real main food. What's diminishing our hunger for Jesus? It could be that we've been nibbling far too long at a load of good things. They're good things, but we give them ultimate meaning. And so, you know, we're thinking to ourselves, you know, I'm going to find ultimate meaning in my marriage or self-worth in my job or contentment with my earnings. Maybe some of us have got addictive behaviors and they provide a high, but it's short-lived. We keep on going back. Maybe it's gambling. Maybe it's drink. Maybe it's pornography. Maybe it's drug use. And we love it. We don't want to let it go. But at the same time, the amount of times we've Googled, how can I stop my addiction to ... We know that it's shackled us. And we want to be free from it. If that is you, if you're dealing with any of those things, by the way, you're no worse off than anybody else in here. All of us are in the same boat. It's longing for healing and wholeness in Jesus. Come and find that in him. The food Jesus offers is life and wholeness. I also just want to mention time on this point, because I think time is a challenge when it comes to snacking and the difference between snacking and eating the real main dish of Jesus. We live in this 24/7 city that never sleeps, and maybe, time is getting in the way of feasting. I was thinking about this, and I was thinking of Mary and Martha. You know, Martha, she's doing the honorable thing of entertaining her guests in a culture where entertainment was very important, whereas Mary, she switched off from that, and she is just sitting at Jesus' feet, and we're told that she gets it right. She's in the room with him. She's fixated on him. She's feeding on him, not worrying about the earthly meal, feeding on him. And Martha is there in the kitchen. She's clanging her dishes all the louder in the hope that she might get the attention of her sister so that she'll see that she's doing all the work. For Mary, everything else goes out the window because Jesus is in the room. Time, the challenge of time. Are we people that walk around with gods on our wrist or gods in our pockets, telling us that we have to be at the next thing, the next thing, the next thing, the next thing? You know, the world will see us spending time with God as time wasting. You know, preaching is tough, as I've already said. Like, it challenges me. Every time I get up to speak, it goes right into my heart. Because genuinely, I want more time with God. I really do. Like, I want to fight for more of that this year, 2026. I really want to spend more time with him. I want to just get to a quiet place, away from all the distractions, even if it's kids running around who might otherwise jump on me, not because they want something, but just for a cuddle. Just get away from those distractions. Just time with God, waiting, praying, meditating on the scriptures. And yet, when you say that to some, even some people in the church, they will say to you, it's almost like a criticism, wow, you must have really thick margins to find time to do all of that. Your attitude to work must be fairly laissez-faire. Time's an idol for us, friends. Even for us in church, time is an idol for Westerners. And so, therefore, we get into this habit where we'll think of combining. So we'll say, right, we're going to spend time with God, but there's these things that I need to do. So I'm going to do Jesus and cooking. And I'm going to have, my YouTube sermon on in the background whilst I cook. And I'm going to do, Ellie, this isn't at you, just thinking off the top of my head, prayer and stretching. I'm going to pray whilst I'm driving somewhere in the car. Now listen to me, hear me out. Lots of those things are good. I say as much as possible, when you're doing your daily chores, get Jesus in the background speaking to you. But I'm preaching to myself here, and I'm saying, Greg, don't kid yourself in thinking that just because you're doing something that you need to do at this moment, you've got God involved, you're spending time with God. What do I want the most? Am I willing to just go after him before I need to do anything else because he's the most important person in my life? Oh, wow, that's a challenge. I feel it. How we spend our time reveals what we value the most. But he's worth it. Turn to your neighbor, say, Jesus is worth it. It's painful. Like when you're hungry for just something there and then, to forego the snack, to wait for the meal, is painful. It's going to be painful cutting some of those things out of our lives, really is. And yet we're going to be saying, Lord, just help me to do this, because those things, it might seem like they're satisfying me, but my body's grown accustomed to like my whole dopamine system is just grown accustomed to having that thing that gives me a rush, and then I feel dreadful afterwards. I know it's for the best. So I want those things cut out of my life. Put a picture up on the screen. It's quite an odd one. It's of an X-ray of my mouth. This is when I had root canal. Like I told you, I got a sweet tooth, a meaty tooth. Had root canal in I think that's like L4, something like that. Those white blobs on the screen, they're fillings. I got quite a few of them. You can call me Jaws. But anyway, when I was going in for this root canal, I said to the dentist, look, I'm a bit worried. Because that one white blob, well, there's three of them up there, but one of them, it hurt. Like, you gave me the anesthetic, but I still felt it. I think you hit a nerve or something. Like, I'm worried about this because you've got to go deeper. And the dentist said to me, yeah, like, we'll try and numb the pain as much as possible, but for the health of your tooth, we're not just focusing on the surface here. We've got to go right down to the root. And in that moment, I was like, do I do a runner? Or do I go through the momentary, potentially excruciating pain for long-term gain. Why am I sharing this? Because if you truly want the Holy Spirit to utterly change you, if you want him to work a miracle in your life so that everything, your thoughts, your sense of being, everything about you just screams, Jesus. If you want that, then it may well hurt a bit. He'll need to go deep into your life, to cut right down to the roots. And he's got all the tools. He's got infinite capacity. But are you willing, metaphorically, to commit to those appointments with God? Or would you just prefer a more casual Christianity that doesn't cost you anything? Casual Christianity. We don't want casual Christianity, God. We want you, just you. Because you're more satisfying than anything else. That's my dream for all saints. We don't want casual Christianity. As I was thinking about this, I found this in my study. This is an old tract of C.T. Studd, who founded WEC. And it was doing the rounds. It's called The Chocolate Soldier. It was doing the rounds at the start of the 20th century. I presume that chocolate soldiers were popular sweets back then that you could buy in any ye olde sweet shop. Anyway, he begins, heroism, the opposite of casual Christianity. Heroism is the lost chord, the missing note of present-day Christianity. Every true soldier is a hero. A soldier without heroism is a chocolate soldier. Remember, when we're talking about soldiers, we're not talking the physical. I've already said that at the start of the service. We're talking spiritual. And that challenge is maintained the whole way through this tract. He says this. I'll read out a few of the one-liners. He says, I love this. God never was a chocolate manufacturer and never will be. Chocolate melts the first sign of battle and the heat's just turned up a little bit. Nah, God gives us more than that. The otherwise Christian is a chocolate Christian. They are chocolate soldiers who merely go to see battles, could think of pastoral care, and coolly urge others to fight them. Oh, you'll be okay. You stay over there. Nah, God says, no, I'm going to get involved in your life because I see Jesus in you. Speaking of John the Baptist and his fearless responses to the Pharisees, he says, John, I love this, never served his curried with butter sauce. A man of God, no sugar plum or chocolate soldier he. It's hilarious, but it's powerful. Anyway, that's a long word on hunger. God, don't let All Saints be a chocolate manufacturing company. What substance? Hungering after Jesus. Now, I could go on all day. I'm going to say a brief word about seeking the face of God. Said a word about hungering, seeking the face of God, and I might potentially, I've got some books up here. We're not going to see all of them, but I might just squeeze in a revival story as well. First off, I want to read verse 11 from Exodus 33. It's up on the screen, verse 11 from Exodus 33, seeking God's face. Then the Lord would speak to Moses face to face as one speaks to a friend. Now this is referring to Moses speaking to God in what was called the tent of meeting. And Moses, as the leader of God's people, would go in alone. Nobody else was permitted. And then the Lord, as shown by a pillar, there's a little image on the screen of the pillar of fire at nighttime, would come and rest above that tent. And all the other nomadic Israelites at the time, they'd just worship. Moses would come out, his face would be radiating, literally his skin would be shining, and they'd be freaking out, so much so they had to start putting a veil over his face. They were in so much awe. Most of you know that the last church I was in a rural location, no street lamps. When I first went out there, I thought, wow, this is dark. Winters were dark. But on a clear night, you didn't need any because the moon's like a floodlight. The interesting thing about the moon is it doesn't emit its own light, does it? It just reflects the sunlight. That's what's going on with Moses. He's come into the presence of the original light source and he goes away fully charged. Anyway, that was verse 11. Secondly, the other verses on the screen, verses 18 to 20. Here we go. We read, Then Moses said, Now show me your glory. And the Lord said, I will cause all my goodness to pass in front of you, and I will proclaim my name, the Lord, in your presence. I will have mercy on whom I'll have mercy. I'll have compassion on whom I'll have compassion. But, he said, you cannot see my face, for no one may see me and live. 2 verses, fairly close together, seeming to say different things. Did Moses see God's face or did he not? Might be helpful to know that the word face in Hebrew, panim, has a wide semantic range. It pops up some 2,300 times. It gets translated in multiple ways. Sometimes literally as face, other times as countenance or presence or favor, fairly often with the word before in the translation, so i.e. standing before someone or something. And so again, like with eating Jesus' flesh language, seeking the face of God is akin to being in the room with God, caught up in the presence of God. Literally, Moses, he's in the room with God's presence, and he comes away glowing. Remember the disciples on the way to Emmaus who've just spoken with the resurrected Jesus, and they say to themselves, were our hearts not, some translations, glowing as we spoke to him face to face? He's the heat source. Our God's the consuming fire. And so, friends, the face-to-face reference in Exodus 33:11 is an idiom conveying direct communication. It's not specifying a physical face there. And yet that does not deny for 1 second any friendship with God. Moses walked as a friend with God, and we can too. He's a speaking God. Today, he's constantly inviting us all into intimate encounter. But we can't see his face and live. That's what God said to Moses, didn't he? I'll show you my glory. You'll hear of my compassion as I hide you in that cleft in the rock. But you can't see my face and live. What do you make of that? Can't see my face and live. What do you make of that? I love the fact that Moses now has seen the face of God. This is the story of the Bible right here. We're created. This is Bible History 101. We're created to dwell with God, to cherish seeing his face, dwelling in his presence. That's the picture of the Garden of Eden, the bliss and safety. Can you imagine? We're told they walked in the cool of the day with God. Wow. And yet, sin came along, messed it all up. And ever since then, there's just been running and hiding, unable in ourselves, in our own community, like strength, to be able to create a portal to take us back into God's presence. And yet, Jesus comes, and through his death and resurrection, he ends the reign of sin. And there and then he's promising to restore Eden, a new garden. That's the promise at the end of the Bible. We often encapsulate it with the word heaven, but it's a restoration of Eden, where all his followers will dwell with him, where we'll see God face to face, and he'll wipe away every tear and all pain. No more death. Jesus gives us a glimpse that he's the one with authority to bring all of that, and it's at his transfiguration where his clothes become dazzling white, as none in the world could bleach them. And he has this booming voice from heaven endorsing him that he's the one. And with him are 2 figures. Who are the 2 figures? Elijah and Moses. Moses. So even if face simply meant presence back in Exodus 33, because God's good and he's the God of the living, Moses still gets to see the face of God. Hungering for Jesus, seeking his face. It's about now, right now, it's this yearning now, but it's also about eternity. Moses wasn't let down, and neither will you be if you trust in the living God. You can't see my face and live. But we take that word seriously. You can't see my face and live. Like with cutting out the worldly snacking, something inside of us dies when we encounter the living God. If you're here, you're praying today, just, Lord, I want to seek your face. I want to be in your presence. When you're caught up in his presence, something inside of you will die. Everything changes in that encounter. Absolutely everything that's absorbing my attention, like plaguing me, just goes out. It's forgotten. We sing that hymn, the things of the world grow strangely dim. Jesus dominates my horizon. I don't know about you, but I want that. I want that. Life becomes more colorful when Jesus is in the room. You know, I heard this the other day. Spiritual maturity is measured by your FaceTime with God. You going to FaceTime God today? You know what? This is true for all of you. You will only be as close to God as you truly want to be. Because God comes where he's wanted. James chapter 4, verse 8, come near to God and he will come near to you. It's why we keep on talking about this phrase, God comes where he's wanted. And as I close, this is what every revival I read of has in common. It's a sense of the presence of God. That's because his people, his church, have been desperately praying and waiting on him. And I ask you, all saints, are we? I'm going to invite the band up now, and as they come up and start preparing, as I'm drawing to a close, I want to just read a few snippets from this book. Ruth lent me. I saw your face earlier, Ruth. But you lent me earlier on this week, and there you are, yeah. And I've been reading it, and I'm pumped up by it. Thank you very much for lending it to me. This is all about the revival, one particular revival, although there's many revivals that have happened on the island of Lewis from 1949 to 1952 under Douglas Campbell's leadership, but really he was just an instrument in God's hands. And lots of the book consists of his diary entries. So I just want to read you one. 22nd of August, 1951. This has been another week of much blessing. Notwithstanding very stormy weather, the people have come out in crowds and on several nights refused to go home until morning. Converts from Ness, Barvas, Arnold, and Lubost have been coming in buses, and at 4 o'clock this morning, we were assembled on the shore singing the songs of Zion as the boats carried them across the Sound to the mainland. There's just loads and loads of input like that every day. Just like, wow, wow, wow. Going on until the early hours of the morning. In the evening, there'd be maybe 1, 2, even 3 meetings, but then they'd go back to somebody's house for further ministry time. We might call that response time in our church. And time and sleep went out the window because they were in the room with God. There's a section towards the back of the book titled Characteristics of the Revival. And there's a few subheadings I thought I'd just pull out. One of them, hunger, late hours. Let me read just a few sentences from that. Hunger, late hours. Mary says, what a waste of time it seemed to go to bed. Norman Campbell recalls, we would be out at the meeting at 7 p.m., then go home, and about 9 p.m. have something to eat, then off to the next meeting in Aird or somewhere else until 11 p.m. or midnight. After that, we'd go to a house meeting until 4 or 5 a.m. This would go on night after night. Imagine Duncan Campbell, the minister, going to all these meetings. He was not young. Amazingly, we kept going and did not get tired. The power and presence of God strengthened us. It was supernatural. You want that? It comes at a cost, but it doesn't feel like a cost when you're there because God's in the room. Another of the characteristic subtitles was the consciousness of the presence of the Lord. Annie McKinnon Kintyre says, I felt as if the Spirit of the Lord was in the very air one was breathing. It was just wonderful. God was in their homes. God was speaking to people at their daily work. The consciousness of the divine was everywhere. Others have described the presence of God as a canopy overhead. I remember meeting up with Frog or Ewing before I came here. He was one of the previous ministers here. And he told me about this story. By the way, All Saints has also known some revival. And this story that he told me, I think, is an extension of the revival that I mentioned last week under the ministry of Bob Hurley, also a pawn in God's hands. But he says he remembers the first time All Saints launched Love Peckham. Some of you would have been around when Love Peckham, that mission, was launched. And he said it was the same thing. It wasn't just in church. When he walked around Peckham, there was this sense like the air was thick with his presence. And he remembers one day cycling around to 2 different estates where he knew that some youth work was happening. And he saw a load of teenagers on the streets in these council estates on their knees in front of heroic youth leaders giving their lives to Christ. And he almost fell off his bike. One of my favorite stories, much more present during my time, somebody came up to me and said, I love this story. It's a bit risque, but he was on his knees in his room praying. And as he lost himself more and more in prayer, he had this growing awareness of God's presence in the room with him. And he said, it became so overbearing and holy. That's how he described it, holy. It instilled this righteous fear inside of him. And he dared not keep his eyes closed anymore because, this is what he said, I was afraid I was going to poop myself. He told his dad. And his dad said to him, son, next time you keep praying. No matter what happens, never shirk where an encounter with God might lead. I love that story. There's more substance to our God than anything we've experienced in this life so far. And so we pray more, Lord. Like Lewis, come again. Last characteristic I'll mention, titled Phenomena. We read, people fell unconscious through the fullness of the revelation they received through the word. Their faces were radiant as they reflected the heavenly visions which they beheld. I found that interesting, thinking about Moses' radiant face, being in the room with God, charged by his heat source. The quote continues, and then there was also the more dramatic event of house shaking. Sandy Moore tells of another great event. There we sat, waiting on the Lord, when suddenly the house shook. It shook! Exclamation mark. There are witnesses still alive to confirm this. The 6 girls on the bench fell to the floor. The daughter of the home called out to her parents who were in bed, get up, the house is falling. The undeniable presence of God. I don't know how to end this sermon. And I know I've been going on a while. But my prayer is that somewhere in your heart, there's a hunger developing. You're saying to yourself, Lord, I want this. I really, really want this. Because I know something of you, and what I know is your life and your love. And I know that if I'm close to you, everything else will fall into place. I invite you to stand. Let's pray together, and we're going to worship some. Lord, those stories are beautiful. We believe them, but help us in our unbelief as well. Dispel the lies that have shackled us, telling us that you're great, but that we need something else too, this thing or that thing. Jesus, bring us back to the truth that you are all we need. We want to be in the room with you. And we pray for your mercy over Peckham too. That the air, it'd be like a bubble, a canopy over Peckham, and the air would be thick. The sense of your presence.